Your Business Podcast with Frank Furness.
Well, hi everybody and welcome to Sales School, and this is Frank Furness, where we're going to help you make more money by mastering sales, dominating marketing, and really being happy. In our next episodes, we're going to be taking a look at the psychology of sales, and I'm going to be joined by my really good friend Ian Halsall, where we speak about Neuro-Linguistic Programming. About 4 years ago, I decided I wanted to find out what really drove the top salespeople. So I wrote to 500 of the world's top salespeople, and I said to them, what makes you so good? What makes you fantastic? And you know, the biggest driving force of most top salespeople is belief and focus. They absolutely believe in what they're doing, and they then focus on results. Now, Ian, I know you're going to be speaking to us about the 5 principles of success and some of the things we need to maybe do even before we think about the sales cycle. Tell us a little bit about those 5 principles.
Sure. Before I get into the 5 principles, I'd just like to say at this early part in the program that there's a lot of NLP techniques, a long, long list, many, many books. We won't even have time to cover all of them. One of the most important things when I teach NLP practitioner is the 5 principles of success, which is something that just takes a few words and it is absolute dynamite for increasing your effectiveness, increasing your sales, and increasing the amount of money you make. Number 1 of the 5 principles is know your outcome. Now, this might sound familiar. In fact, if anybody's successful at anything in life, it's got to start somewhere with an initial idea. What is it you want to accomplish? What kind of money do you want to make? Where do you want to be as a person? What kind of things do you want to have? What kind of house do you want to have? What kind of car do you want to have? What kind of relationships do you want to have? What kind of physical body do you want to have? And of course, what kind of bank account do you want to have? It's so important to have a clear idea of where you want to be. Why is that? Well, the human brain's interesting. Have you ever tried to not think of something? Sometimes when I go to seminars, I say to people, let's take 10 seconds to try and not think of anything. So then I shut up for 10 seconds and just wait. And then after 10 seconds, I say to the class, okay, how did you get on? And most people, normally, I might get 1 or 2 who claim they can do it, but generally people can't not think. They try to think about something like their past, or they try and think of a blank screen. The human brain, and this is the N in NLP, the human brain is not very good at doing nothing. It tends to be doing something. That's not a question. The only question is, what is it you are thinking about? Because if you're not thinking about what you want in the future, chances are your brain will automatically slip to doing something else, which is often what you don't want, or it's often what's not right, or for a lot of people, it's often something in the past. So having a clear idea of where you want to be is important in any aspect of life, but particularly in NLP. Number 2 of the 5 principles of success, and this is one of the biggest things that differentiates people that are great salespeople or great NLP practitioners, is being able to have a real clear bias towards action. Take action. Because in the early days of NLP, some people were very effective and some people weren't. Some of the early days of NLP, there were people, by the way, they were using NLP for therapy, and I should say early on in this talk that most of what NLP has been used for up to now, it's mostly been therapy. There are not many salespeople using NLP, which is great news for you listening now, because if you're using NLP, the chances are you're doing something that your competition is not doing. And there were some people who were very effective at NLP, and the thing that made the difference wasn't their level of knowledge, it was their level of action. So people in the early days of NLP were having some very interesting conversations. Some of them weren't getting the results. Why? Because they weren't getting out there and trying stuff. At the heart of NLP is an attitude of experimentation. Try stuff out. Get out there. Get into the marketplace. Get in front of prospects. Talk to people on the phone and find out what works. It's a very, very important thing. NLP isn't just knowing what the title NLP stands for. It's a whole attitude. You've got to have an idea of what you want to do and get out there and do stuff. And guess what? Some of the things that you try are not going to work the way you want them to first time. So you take that feedback on board. And a very important part of NLP in the early days was just to do modeling, which is incidentally something that we might need to talk about, Frank. Modeling is the idea of taking something that somebody else is already doing and you do it the way they do it, and maybe you're going to get the result they get. In fact, there's a lot of free information out there as to how to be a great salesperson. So that's the number 2 thing, is being able to take a lot of action. In fact, some trainers say massive action. Third thing is to have appropriate state control. Now, I'm going to not talk too much about that now because that's really a separate track, is that if you can control your state, you will sell more. The fourth one is to have Sensory acuity. Now, this is a very big subject. Sensory acuity means that you spot the clues. Sometimes it's about spotting the tiny little clues. You're with a prospect. Are you paying attention to that prospect? All the time they're talking, all the time you're talking, all the time he's listening, all the time you're listening, you're picking up little clues. Most people don't pick up clues. In fact, a big area of NLP, which I'll just touch on briefly, is the NLP communication model, which deals with how the human brain receives information. And one of the questions I love to ask classes is, what's the primary job of the human brain? After a couple of seconds of silence, people say, well, it's to store information, it's to analyze information, it's to make decisions, it's to reflect. I say, well, all of that's true to some degree, but the biggest job of the human brain is elimination. The amount of stuff that can come at the human brain is massive, and what we tend to do is we eliminate most of it. In fact, in sensory terms, if I can just hit you with a couple of technical numbers, in sensory terms, your senses, your sight, sound, touch, smell, and taste, can take in 2 million bits of information per second.
Amazing.
Well, as you can imagine, Frank, if you were to take in all of that information, what would it do to your brain?
Explode.
It would explode in approximately 0.1 of a second. So the main job that your brain's doing is saying, don't need to know, don't need to know. So, for example, if you're listening to me now, you might be not aware of the feeling of your left foot inside your left shoe or your left big toe against your sock. But now I've said that, what do you notice? You're feeling it? Probably. Now, the thing is, were you feeling it 60 seconds ago? Chances are, no. Your brain was saying, don't need to know that. So the biggest thing that the human brain does is eliminate information, which it's got to do, by the way. But the thing is it always doing it to the right level? Not necessarily. Most salespeople, and I think I can say 95% of salespeople, don't sell as much as they could because they're not spotting the clues. They're filtering it out. They're eliminating it. Somebody might say something like, I'm interested in that. Salesperson doesn't hear it. Or they might suddenly get interested, their eyes light up, they might have a very, very strong reaction, and the salesperson is so big on reading from their prepared script that they don't see it. And if you can just have more sensory acuity spotting these clues, you will be more successful.
Would that include body language as well, watching for the person sitting forward, the eye contact, open hands?
Absolutely. In fact, when we get onto rapport, remind me to come on to eye contact because that's a very, very rich goldmine. But yeah, people give more information out from their body than anything else. In fact, there was a bunch of Swedish scientists that measured the number of individual movements one human being can pick up off of another, and it came to 200,000. From big movements like an arm or an eye raise to the microscopic movements like a 0.5 millimeter flutter of the eyes or a slight little change in the degree of the smile, including lower lip dilation and pupil dilation. I mean, like thousands upon thousands upon thousands. And if you can just get, by the way, a great piece of good news for any salesperson listening to this, you don't have to be brilliant. It's such a big target. If you just scratch the surface, you'll be able to amaze people because you'll spot the clues. If they're suddenly, I'll give you a silly example just to make the point. If you're talking about product A or product B, product A, their eyes light up a little bit. Product B, their eyes kind of go down on the floor. You say, well, we could talk about product A. Well, there's product B. But then again, no. I think maybe we should be talking about product A. They haven't even spoken, but you've spotted the body language clues.
And doesn't this happen with professional gamblers? I mean, if they get a good deck of cards, their eyes are going to sparkle, their pupils are going to dilate, so they wear dark glasses so they don't give those clues away.
Yeah, but dark glasses won't give you a lot of help if you're dealing with somebody who's good at NLP. In fact, on one occasion I saw on TV the World Poker Champions, and poker is probably the best game to illustrate this. If you're going to be a great poker player, you might be holding 3 aces or 4 aces, a really good hand. You don't want the other guys to know. So you've got to be very good at not giving out these little signals, or as a poker player or a gambler would call them, a tell. It might be an involuntary little flick of the little finger. It might be, or if we're talking real sensory acuity, it might be a change of skin color. Somebody might blush a little bit more or a little bit less. Microscopic eye flutters.
Fantastic. And what are the other sort of success attributes or principles?
Well, the fifth of the 5, and this is really important, and it's called have behavioural flexibility. And it's a very misunderstood term, so I've got to define my terms here for a moment. Having behavioural flexibility doesn't always mean that you're going to have to be agreeable or adaptable or accommodating. Behavioural flexibility does not mean that. Behavioural flexibility does mean that you can change your behaviour so that you get the result you want. And people say to me, well, does that mean I've got to change being me? And I say, no, you're still being you, but you're being a different you. If you're with a bunch of friends and you're cracking a joke or they're cracking a joke, you're being humorous, you're telling jokes. That's a behaviour. If you're in hospital with a friend who's poorly, you might be very quiet and sympathetic, or you might tell them a joke too. It depends on what you feel is appropriate. They're all you, and they're all different behaviours. Now, if you want to be a great salesperson, have as much behavioural flexibility as you can. It relates a little bit to what you were saying about, Frank, with sell to people the way they want to be sold. Some people, they like to ask a lot of questions, so you shut up and listen to the questions. Some people want to talk a lot. Again, you shut up, let them talk. Some people, they want to be very quiet, and you've got to let them. They let you do all the talking. In that case, start talking. Some sales prospects, they like jokes. Tell them a joke. Some sales prospects like a lot of techie stuff. Give me the Excel spreadsheet and give me all the data to 3 decimal places. Switch on the Excel spreadsheet. Give them the data to 3 decimal places. Some people, they don't care about that so long as you're a nice fella and you remembered their wife's birthday. In which case, be a nice fella. Remember their wife's birthday. These are all different behaviours. And it's something that I find very, very challenging with some salespeople because they say, what's the best way to talk? What's the best way to use my body language? What's the best way to dress? And I say, whichever way gets the sale. I've done sales in very expensive suit and tie. I've done sales wearing an old pair of jeans and a T-shirt. Because some people, they're going to respond to the way you dress. So what's the best way? Whichever gets the result.
Ian, that's a really good point because I do a lot of work in the City of London and almost the dress code there is dark suits, white shirts, conservative ties, lace-up shoes. But let me go into a creative agency dressed like that. They're going to chase me out because I don't look like them. So it's almost dressing being like the people you're selling to, because people buy from people that they like and they feel comfortable with and they trust, people that are almost similar to them. Would you agree with that?
100%. In fact, we'll get onto rapport as a separate track, I think. But just briefly, one of the biggest things that makes people buy is that they feel good about being with the salesperson. It's not rocket science as a concept. So all you've got to do is think for a moment, what kind of thing would make them feel good when they're with me? So if I still own an engineering business, and so if I'm dealing with engineers, these are guys wearing overalls, foot protection, hard hats, dirty old shirts. So when I go and sell to them, guess what? I dress that way. It's not because I haven't got the money for a new suit. I dress that way because they'll look at me and they'll go, I like you. And one of the reasons I like you is because you're kind of like me. You walk like me, you look like me, and it kind of inculcates in them this idea that you must be an okay fella because you're one of us. You're in the club, and people want to buy from people that are in their club.
That's quite amazing. A couple of years ago, I started working with a company in Hong Kong, and one of their top salespeople right now, he'd just started in sales at that stage, and he said to me, Frank, you know what? I'm just going to sell to Chinese millionaires. I said, well, that's very nice. Few challenges you face, though, is you've never sold before. You actually don't know any Chinese millionaires. How are you going to do it? Well, this is what he did. He went and borrowed as much money as he could from all of his friends, his relatives, all of the banks. And what he did is he joined the 2 most prestigious clubs in Hong Kong. Well, guess what? On a daily basis, he's meeting, he's mixing with, and he's developing rapport with the people he wants to sell to. Right now, most of them are his clients because, you see, those kinds of people would rather buy from somebody in the club, somebody that belongs to the same kind of club as them, somebody that looks the same, somebody that dresses the same as them. And these are the things that you've got to think about right now. Think about the people you're selling to. Do you develop great rapport with them? And what changes can you make immediately to get better results? Well, I I really hope you enjoyed today's podcast. And remember, if you'd like to book me to speak at your next conference or do some sales training, either in person or via Zoom remotely, please drop me an email, frank@frankfurness.com. Also, please take a look at my website, frankfurness.com, and take a look at some of my courses on productivitycenter.com. Remember also to connect with me on all of the social media channels. They're all under Frank Furness, especially LinkedIn, where I'm almost up to 30,000, and every day I have some great new ideas and tips on sales, marketing, speaking, and anything that will make you money. Hey, this is Frank. See you in the next episode.